Today I wanted to discuss a very important topic with you guys because I've learned the hard way and I don't want other people to make the same mistakes that I've made. So I want to give you a better shot at getting your book edited correctly without having so many delays and so many miscommunications and pretty much how to avoid bad communication between you and an editor. So, rule number one, know the genre that you're writing in or for. If you know your book is going to be having vampires, werewolves, magical swords, magical items, anything such as that, you're going to be writing in a fantasy genre, which means Game of Thrones, anything that involves witches, and any mystical creature, vampires, werewolves, etc. This is going to assist you better into what you need to look for when you are looking for an editor to help you take your book to the next level. My example, if you're writing a sci-fi book, you may want to find an editor who knows sci-fi genre. For instance, if you find a editor who is into the psychology or holistic healing, then when they are editing your sci-fi book, they're going to always be in the mind of psychology, holistic healing, basically wholesome type of books where they are used to reading stuff about yoga, kundalini yoga, just different types of forms of yoga or anything that's basically holistic in nature. However, if you find a editor who knows sci-fi, who reads sci-fi, they're going to know what to look for. They're going to know what books are successful, what books are not successful, what worked and what don't work. And that all goes to say that it'll help you better guide your way through your writing as far as working your way up to publish or courting an agent at the least. One of the things that I have encountered is having an editor that is really good at what they do. So good, in fact, that they can pretty much know what you're going to say and know what you're trying to say without even having any sense of what's going on in your book. However, this is where it gets tricky. As your story starts to progress, the plot starts to thicken, they don't have the sci-fi hat on. So if they're not sci-fi enabled, your plot may not make sense to them because that is simply not what they are used to. You're going to find yourself running around in circles trying to explain to them why your book works this way, why your world works this way, why the principle and laws work this way. And we have to remember that this is a science fiction book. We have to remember these are science fiction books. So when you're writing sci-fi, all things don't have to make sense sometimes. And I'm telling you this because if you think about it, okay, for example, we can't really question why J.K. Rowling kills a powerful wizard by falling off his broom when the use of levitation spells exist. Or we can't really question why George Lucas, the use of force is only allowed to some certain people. What qualifies a person to be able to use the force? We don't know that. If we do, let me know. I know there are Jedis I know that they have Jedi academies, but we don't know why some people are born with the force and simply some are not. We don't know that. So we can't really question certain things in sci-fi genre because the story has to continue regardless. So my thing is this: finding an editor who is familiar with your genre of the book you're going to be writing is going to be one of the most important things to key communications. And you don't want to find yourself spending money over and over, and you're not getting anything in return except for, hey, rewrite this. I don't think this makes sense. It's inaccuracies. There's always going to be an inaccuracy. So my thing is this: when you get to the point where you have a book and you wrote your book and it's completely storyboarded, and you went from the storyboard and you typed it all out from chapters 1 all the way to the end, and you roll it all the way until you put the end. My biggest suggestion to you guys right now, before you even think about doing anything, I'm talking about rewriting, editing and revising. Before you start that process, give yourself 1 week to determine if it's going to be worth rewriting your story. Because I'm gonna tell you, one mistake that a lot of writers are going to make is when you start writing and an editor sends you your manuscript back with corrections and suggestions, you don't have to take all their suggestions. You don't have to accept everything, because your story is a story. Once you finish the book and you're going through your suggestions from your editor, you have to remind yourself that most suggestions, you don't have to accept all their suggestions, because at the end of the day, they are just suggestions. You don't want to get into the mix of changing your book so much that the dynamics of it changes to you as the author, because at the end of the day, you are the author. It's your story. However, you do want to know what works and what don't, which why it's so important to have an editor who knows what to do, what works and what don't. Okay, and tip number 2, the contract. When you find an editor, if you don't, and this is for people who are wanting to go a more traditional route of publishing, and that's going through an agent, going through a publishing house. If before you get to that point where you want to start querying agents, before you get to the point where you want to query agents, you're probably going to want to send your book to an editor that you're going to hire on your own. So what I'm saying is this: make sure what's all involved inside the edit, or the prices that your editor quotes you. Make sure that these 2 things are involved in the price, in the price that your editor your editor quotes you. Ask them, hey, I would like at least 2 weekly check-ins every week. So if you do eight check-ins every for the month, that's 2 check-ins per week. Also, make sure that they are able to answer questions when you need them, because if they're going to be making suggestions, they should know how you decide to work or move forward with those suggestions, because their suggestions may be really good, but then some may not be so good, and you just may say, okay, I'll take a little piece of this and add this on to what I already have, and now we'll make it whole. We'll come together. We'll make it whole. So make sure you're having weekly check-ins with your editor, and it could be a text message or, hey, can you log on to my Google Doc and read the last chapter I just wrote? Because I added additional elements, and I just want to see if it works or not. So that way we're not volleying text back and forth, and the book is not being read by you, my editor. And I think it's pretty important for your editor to read the book, especially if they're making suggestions. Make sure your editor is more involved in the process, because at the end of the day, they know what works and they know what don't. If they know your genre. If they don't know your genre, then they're going to be going off their own experience, which can be a little frustrating, because sometimes you may know more about your genre than your own editor do, especially if they're not into sci-fi. Like I said, having a holistic psychological editor versus a sci-fi author or a sci-fi editor, they're going to be in 2 different mindsets. They're going to say, oh, this works, and over here they're going to be like, oh, that does work. At the end of the day, I don't want you guys to spend time and money and you're not moving forward in your progress. There's no forward progress. Take 2 steps forward, then back 3. That's not how the process works. The process should always be, all right, we're going to take 3 steps forward, maybe 2 steps back. Next time we're going to take 5 steps forward, no, a step back. Then we're going to take 6 steps forward, and then you may have to take half step, but then you're gonna cross that finish line, and it's gonna be like, hey, this book is ready to be published, ready to be queried to different agents. If you haven't gotten anything from this video, let me give you 3 things that you should know after you finish writing your book. Number 1, find the editor who knows your genre. Important. Key number 1. Number 2, find somebody who's in tune culturally with what's going on today in society, and just have an awareness for of current social issues. And number 3, make sure they are competent in your book. You don't want them to be confused. So The worst thing you could do is have a confused editor editing your book, because all you're going to get back is a manuscript full of confusion. And that's no good, because, like I said, guys, we want to take more steps forward than we take back. If your editor is confused, everybody is confused. The author is confused. Editor is confused, no book is done. Okay, guys, so there you have it. Writing a book is hard. Writing a great book is even harder. So just keep going at it. Keep patient yourself. There is going to be times of frustration, but guys, just keep moving forward. Don't stop. Continue doing what you're doing. All right. Peace out. Next time.